Welcome to Mr. V Teaching Math. In this session, we're going to be looking at adding and subtracting fractions. Let's take a look at my first question here. I have 2/5. There's my 2/5. Now I'd like to add 1/5. How many fifths do I have? Well, that's pretty simple. I have 3/5. Now what about this question? I have 2/5, and I want to take away 1/5. I'm left with 1/5. So when you are adding or subtracting fractions, if the denominator is the same, you just add or subtract the top numbers. But what about these kinds of questions? How does this work? Let's say I have 2/3, and I want to add 1/6. What do I have? 3/9? Is that going to work? Can I have 3/9? 3/9 is very small. 3/9 is less than this. 3/9 would only be this big, so it can't be 3/9. What in the world do I do? How do I add these? Does it become, 2 plus 1 over 3 plus 6? What do I do? Well, actually, there's a fairly simple thing to do. Now, let's add them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sixths. These are the same. They're equivalent fractions. Now let's look at this question. Again, I have 2/3 and I want to subtract 1/6. I can't take that out. There's not enough room for me to take it out. But if I go like this, I can take that out, and I can see that my answer is 3/6, which, by the way, isn't in lowest terms. We'll come back to that in a moment. What did I just do? If I want to do this in symbols, let's go through that. I had 2/3 and 1/6, and I wanted to add them. I turned this into an equivalent fraction. I said, what is the lowest common multiple that I can convert these into? And it happens to be sixths. So to turn that into 6, I need to times it by 2. So I took that, and I times it by 2. And I took this, and I times it by 2. And I got 4/6. 4 plus 1 is 5. Let's look at this one then. Same kind of thing. I have 2/3. I want to take away a 1/6, but I can't. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, convert them. And I'm doing exactly the same thing as last time, where I'm timesing this by 2 and timesing this by 2. And I get 4/6. And now I can take 1 away, leaving with 3/6, which is not in lowest terms, by the way, because both of these can be divided by 3. And my answer will be 1/2 if I write it in lowest terms. Let's do some more examples of this. 1/3 plus 1/8. And I'm going to do that without the symbols. I want to have these denominators the same. What is the lowest common multiple between those two denominators? And I could sit there and work out, okay, 6, 8 doesn't work. 9 doesn't work. 12 doesn't work. 15 doesn't work. And I could keep going, and you do all that work, and you're going to discover that both of these could be out of 24. So I have to times this by 8 and times this by 3. And yes, as some of you noticed, one of the quickest ways to do this is simply take this, times this one by 8, and times this one by 3, which is what I'm doing. However, sometimes if you do that, you're not going to be at your lowest common multiple, and it'll cause you more work later. At any rate, 8 times 3, that's the 24. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 8, that's the 24. 1 times 8 is 8. And now I can add. How many 24ths do I have? 3 plus 8 gives me 11 over 24. Never add the denominators. This doesn't become 48. I'm only adding the top. 11 24ths. Same thing again with a similar question. Now I'm subtracting. Again, I'm going to have to go and find the lowest common multiple. Turn them into something out of 24. But now I'm subtracting. 8 minus 3 gives me 5 over 24. Make sure you check if these are in lowest terms. 11 is a prime number, so unless this is divisible by 11, I can't go any lower. 5 is a prime number, so unless this is divisible by 5, I can't go any lower. What about another kind of question? A little bit more challenging. I need the lowest common multiple that all of these can go into. Now, I happen to be pretty good at my lowest common multiples, so I know what it is. You could indeed go 5 times 8 and do times 4, and that's going to get you a really high number, about 160, and 160 would work for all of those. But it's going to make more work later. It's a lot easier if you know your lowest common multiples to know that this will go into 40. So, what do I have to times this by? This is going to get times by 10. This is going to get times by 5. This is going to get times by 8. So, 1 times 10, that's 10. 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 8 is 8. So, starting from left, 8 plus 5 is 13, minus 10 gives me 3. 3 out of 40. Again, check, is this in lowest terms? This is a prime number, so unless this is divisible by 3, using my divisibility rules, I can see that it's not. Therefore, this is already in lowest terms. And that is how to add and subtract basic fractions.